Hi, I'm Wes Allen from DM Tales, and today I'm going to be reviewing yet another post-apocalyptic gonzo future. This is Mutant Future from Goblinoid Games. So I wanted to review Mutant Future because not only is it reminiscent of first edition Gamma World, which is one of my great loves from my childhood, this is also the first print-on-demand book that I have picked up from DriveThruRPG. So I get a chance to look at that and the game, 2-in-1. I opted for the softcover book. It is already starting to curl, as you can tell, which is what softcover books are prone to do. Perfect binding, so it's glued. This is not going to be lasting for decades on end if I keep treating it the way that I treat my softcover books, which is to toss them around. It is good weight paper. Doesn't feel like it's going to be creasing a whole lot just from normal page flipping, which is always a very good plus. The artwork is utterly beautiful, and it's black and white, comes out great on the print. I will say that I had to wait a little longer than the posted estimates for delivery on DriveThruRPG's website. I did contact their help. They were wonderful, courteous, professional, got right back to me and let me know that they're having problems with the supply chain, as everybody else is at the moment. And so it would take a couple extra days than their normal estimates. And the nice thing about getting this is that I was able to get both the print copy and the PDF at the same time. There is also a no art PDF that you can get on DriveThruRPG for free, which is a great way to jump into the game. And then if you want to get the full experience with all the artwork intact, you can pay for that later. So I'm really appreciative of that, and I like it a lot. All told, I think that this was worth the $18.46 that it cost me to get delivered to my house. And this is a game I'm probably going to be playing at some point in the near future. Mutant Future in its feel is very much akin to Gamma World First Edition. That is the ethos that it brings up, and that really is the way some of the mechanics even are designed to function. As with all retro clones from this era of TSR, there are 6 attributes or ability scores, and they very much parallel what you find inside Gamma World First Edition. You have strength, you have dexterity, constitution, intelligence, willpower, which in Gamma World is mental strength, and charisma. Now, in Gamma World, however, the bonuses for your attributes really tended to follow more of the AD&D mentality, which started them much higher. Mutant Future tends to go with Moldvay Cook and starts them a little bit lower. So with bonuses starting at 13 and moving up from there, it just has a very familiar feel to it for anybody who is jumping in. The bonuses work very much like they do in, say, basic D&D. So your strength, dexterity, and charisma scores really have bonuses that track very nicely with those older games. And in fact, Goblinoid Games is itself the publisher of Labyrinth Lord, and so it really tracks with that. In fact, in the back of the Mutant Future book, there is an entire section of how you can merge Labyrinth Lord and Mutant Future into a cohesive game. It's a really good inclusion, and it kind of shows how this is really working from that Moldvay Cook mentality. So your strength, your dexterity, and your charisma bonuses do track. Strength gives you pluses to hit and to damage. Dexterity gives you pluses on ranged weapons and armor class, and if you're using optional individual initiative, gives you a bonus for that. And charisma, basically the table you could take right out of Moldvay Cook and drop it in here, and it would basically be the same thing. Intelligence doesn't use a plus modifier of +1, +2, or +3. Instead, it adds percentages, +5%, +10%, +15%. However, if you understand math, you recognize that 5% is the same as a +1 on a 20-sided die. So even then, it's using the same mechanic. But the reason why intelligence switches to the percentile is because that's how you do your technology rolls. And a good intelligence score will give you a benefit in that roll. Well, it's a good way of handling it, and I like the way that it works out. Much as it does in First Edition Gamma World, your Constitution score becomes your hit dice. So you don't have a bonus necessarily. It just means that a greater Constitution score is going to give you, on average, more hit points. Starting out, your ability scores are just like they are in Basic and Expert D&D. They're going to be a score ranging from 3 to 18. You just roll a 3d6 and go straight through, and those are your scores. Gamma World, however, does have class levels, and so as you level up, and it functions very similar to the way that Gamma World functions, you have an opportunity to roll for a bonus that you can get, either to damage or extra attacks per round, or a bonus to your ability score. If you get enough bonuses to your ability scores, you can go all the way up to 21, and your bonuses accumulate accordingly. It's a really nice feature, and because you don't necessarily advance in your hit points every level, it gives you a good way to show advancement. That's pretty nice. Gamma World had pure strain humans, which are unmutated humans, humanoids, mutant humans, and mutated animals. You have those three in Mutant Future as well, but this game actually adds androids, and there's 3 varieties of that, including a Blade Runner-esque replicant that rolls normal hit dice, d6, and can heal as normal. Androids, however, begin with 50 hit points, no matter what variety that you are using, and they can't heal, they need to be repaired. So it's a little bit of a different feel there. You also included with the 3 that you had from Gamma World, you have mutated plants, which were kind of discouraged in older editions of Gamma World, but they become a class here in Mutant Future that I think a lot of people will enjoy playing. Each class has different strengths. As I've already mentioned, androids start with 50 hit points no matter what their constitution score is, so that's kind of a plus. Pure humans are recognized by older technology, so if they're going to try to get recognized by a robot or a security system, they're more likely to get through than any of the mutants will. They also roll a d8 hit dice instead of a d6, so there's a greater chance of them having more hit points. Works out pretty well. There is a nice balance between the different classes that makes everybody fun to play. Mutant humans, animals, and plants all get their mutations, which is essentially the magic of Mutant Future. And the descriptions for the mutations inside the Mutant Future core rulebook are fleshed out a little bit better than they are in old school Gamma World. In that older game, published back in 1978, you had a lot that was left up to the game master. So much so that even picking out how much damage something did was really up to the people at the table. And every table of Gamma World could be completely different mechanically from every other table. Mutant Future still has a lot of that wiggle room for the different mutations because it's gonzo, which is a word I've come to embrace about apocalyptic role-playing. And so there is that flexibility, but the descriptions are a little bit more set. So you have a tad bit more guidance as you try to prepare characters' abilities. I like the balance that it strikes. I like the fact that it's a little bit more organized so that I don't feel like it's all left up to me, but they strike a good balance there. One thing I think Gamma World First Edition did better than Mutant Future did was their mutation tables. In Gamma World, the mutation tables were truly random. You had no idea when the defect mutations were going to show up. In Mutant Future, those disadvantageous mutations are all grouped together at the high point of the table, so you know if you roll high, you're going to get something bad. I kind of enjoyed the tension of the old school Gamma World, to be honest. You never really knew what you were going to get, and that really felt more like a mutation than this, whereas roll low, roll low, roll low. And I understand why they did it. It is a little bit more organized, but I really missed the tension of the setup. As I mentioned earlier, Gamma World does have level progression, but you don't up your hit dice like you do in D&D. Instead, that is handled by your constitution score. You do, however, increase your attack values the higher you level up. And that makes sense, and again, it tracks with the old Moldvay Cook style of play, indeed really with Dungeons & Dragons style of play throughout all the editions. But there's something that I miss that Gamma World does that I wish Mutant Future did. In Gamma World, your to-hit was not determined by your level because Gamma World didn't have levels. It was determined by the technology value. What kind of technology was it? If you were someone who was coming at someone with a pistol that fired bullets or a laser weapon, you had a different chance to hit than if you were running up to someone with a stick or a sword or a dagger. And I kind of liked that, to tell you the truth. It really showed that if you had an artifact, you were very dangerous. If you were coming at someone with chainmail and they were coming at you with a laser, you were in trouble because their to hit was going to be a very low number. What Gamma World didn't do about that, however, was to make it simple. If you look at Gamma World's table on to hit with melee attacks, you can see that it is not a linear chart, because in the middle there's a bump as the numbers go up again instead of progressively down. This is where primitive ranged weapons are included. Don't entirely know why they designed it this way. I think it would have been a lot easier had they just made it a linear chart, but it was just something that Gamma World tried to do. They wanted to make it distinct. They wanted to make the fact that greater technology equaled greater danger to the party or to the creatures that they were facing. They almost hit it out of the park, and they just kind of missed it. With Mutant Future going instead into level progression for its increase to hit, it kind of loses something like that. If you have a laser, you're the same chance to hit somebody in chainmail as if someone came at you with a sword or a dagger. And I kind of am disappointed with that. I think one way to balance it out would have been to take all the artifacts, determine their class level by which they would be categorized, and offer a plus to hit depending on it. So a gun would have a plus over a arrow, and a laser would have a plus over a gun. I'm not sure if they wanted to go that way because the pluses could get really wonky, but it would have basically just converted artifacts to magic items fully, and I think it would have worked out fine. Mental attacks function exactly the same way that they did in old school Gamma World. It is essentially a contested willpower roll. There is a chart that you have to look up. You look at the attacker's willpower, you look at the target's willpower, you compare them, and that gets you your number to hit. For people who are used to playing more modern games, this is going to feel a little bit clunky because we're just used to adding a bonus to your D20 roll. But it does function, and it's a nice way of showing the contest between the person who is attacking and the person who is defending. And it really makes having a high willpower, even if you're not a character who has mutations, something that is very important to have. So I kind of like it. I don't mind charts. I kind of miss them in modern D&D, to tell you the truth. And this is functional, works well, and it's fast, so just go with it. In old school Gamma World, in order to learn how to use an artifact, you had a mini game of sorts. It was a flow chart that you would roll and you would progress through. Characters could either have that hidden from them so they wouldn't know where they were going on the chart, or the players could actually see what was going on and they just had to know that doom was approaching or success was approaching. I kind of really like that. Again, I love tension at the table that way. But I've seen it in action, and I can say that it does indeed slow the game down. So there's a drawback to it. Mutant Future gets around that by changing your technology rolls to not a flowchart, but to a percentile roll. You roll once, and you either succeed, you fail, you have a great success, or a terrible failure, and that's limited to that. So it's one roll. I miss the tension. I understand why Mutant Future got away from it. This is very functional. And it's pretty simple the way that they handle it. So I'll give them a plus for that. If you are a game master, or as Mutant Future calls them, Mutant Lord, who is looking to build your own setting, there is some fantastic information on how to build an environment, from what city sizes are like to what services you could expect to find out in the wasteland, and how to design things like adventure hooks. Really fantastically done, very clear. And in fact, if you are playing any role-playing game, I would highly recommend that section of the book in the Mutant Future Core Rulebook on how to design an environment for your game and for your adventure hooks. It's really worth checking out. So I am glad that I picked up Mutant Future, and I'm going to be playing it at some point in the rather near future, just as soon as I conclude one of my other two campaigns. If you are interested in post-apocalyptic role-playing games and you don't want to go for the old school Gamma World and have to deal with some of the quirks of those older style games, Mutant Future is a really good way to go. It's simple to pick up, it is familiar if you understand D&D, and it's just a whole lot of fun. So next week I am hoping to review the first issue of Carcass Crawler, which is Old School Essentials' new zine. Until then, happy playing, everyone.